Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have with us Arlane Gordon-Bray, and we are really honored to have you in our midst today. A quick introduction about Arlane. She's a US diplomat with the Department of State, whose career spans across defense, private, non-profit and academic sectors across multiple continents, with professional experience in more than 10 countries. So she has held roles including the Executive Director of the Edgecombe County Public Schools Educational Foundation, where she helped lead innovative, community-driven approaches to education in rural North Carolina. So she's also the co-founder of Twin Counties Catalyst Collaboration Lab. Community service has remained a central thread throughout her career, reflected in her ongoing mentorship, nonprofit leadership, and active membership in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Arlane has served as Executive Director of the Institute for Politics and Strategy at Carnegie Mellon University, where she managed research teams, led executive education programs for government and industry leaders, and developed initiatives at the intersection of technology, national security, and policy. She has also contributed to global efforts, such as the World Economic Forum, Global Shapers Community, including presenting work at the Davos. She holds a BA in International Studies from Virginia Tech and an MS in Public Policy and Management from the Carnegie Mellon University. Outside of her professional work, she enjoys traveling and exploring new places and has been a yoga beginner for over 15 years. So welcome, Arlane, to Bauer School of Entrepreneurship. We are truly honored to have you in our midst today. What we all carry as common point is an entrepreneurial mindset. If not, it is there to build that. And for me personally, having worked for 25 plus years across various corporate segments, I think the last year meeting Pawan was a turning point, where that mindset of, not just the mindset of entrepreneurship, but then to really start something. And I'm sure that the same would be vouched by a lot more people in the space and many outside otherwise. So thanks to Pawan for creating this great space for all of us, which is very focused on entrepreneurship. The most interesting thing that we've all found across going through a profile was that besides the diplomat that you are and having served various countries at various capacities, it was a co-founder thing that connected with us. So could you tell us a little more about, let's start with that, because that would connect with all of us the co-founder life that you started, what happened in that space?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much from US Consulate Hyderabad. It is a pleasure and an honor for myself to be here as well. So yes, before I was a diplomat, I was a failed entrepreneur twice. And it was a fantastic journey. But hard. It was a very hard journey. So the first time I was just trying out consulting on my own and trying some ideas. I did not know how to brand myself, so that was one journey. The second, for Twin Counties Catalyst Collab, that is a heartbreaker of a journey, but we still did great things. So the whole point of the organization is that we were trying to get rural communities prepared for the future of work. Where I lived in North Carolina at the time was about 40,000 people, and I had worked at Carnegie Mellon at that point for 6 years. So I had seen from 2011 through 2018 what was happening with AI, what was happening with automation. We were having meetings in Silicon Valley, and I remember thinking, there's a lot of people about to be out of work in 5 to 10 years. I go to North Carolina, ended up moving back for family reasons, and I found a partner there, and we were clicking on the same page of we've got to get people ready for what we can see coming. This is like 2018, 2019 by this point. And so we had some funding we received from some nonprofit organizations and some different foundations. We were doing some real community relationship work. That was the key to how we even got as far as we did, is we just worked really hard at forming relationships with our people. And the other foundation was our work was equity-centered design thinking. I know that you guys use design thinking all the time here. The equity piece was key for us. And it's often a key part of the US market, right? Have you guys all heard of the sidewalk example of for in design thinking, where they made the sidewalk and they put the indent in the on-ramp, and the idea was for accessibility purposes, but it actually ended up helping moms, it helped bike riders, etc. We needed that to guide our work. We fully were only thinking the people on the outermost edges who were not getting any support for what could be coming down the pipeline, how do we support them? That economy in rural North Carolina, every single school there is a Title I school, meaning the poverty level is low enough that every single child has a free lunch that they are offered in the United States. North Carolina is also number 47th in education. So we are then thinking about, okay, well, what does this mean? What's this change gonna mean for people who are 18 to 30, who probably have a high school diploma, and what's going to be the next 5 years for them when most of our work is based in farm work or factories, when those get automated? That was our plan. Our theory of change that we got some funding to develop, because one of the best parts about the US is the civil society. Civil society is an entrepreneur trying to fill in the gaps where institution doesn't. That is a part of what I believe is a little bit of the American exceptionalism, is that is there. We got funding to try to move forward with that work. We did a lot of community discussions. I think I did 150 interviews in a town of 40,000 people to try to figure out what would it really take for you to feel comfortable that if your job shifts in the next 5 years, you can make that move. And also as a background, I had been around for the 2008 financial crisis, where we saw factories being shuttered across the US and people who were 45 years old with nothing. And our suicide rates rose, right? So this is a real concern on so many levels for us, right? So we had come up with a great theory of change. We're moving forward. We are moonlighting, right? I'm working a full-time job, and then we are meeting every day 8 to midnight. I know you guys know what that life is like, when you just believe in an idea and you're there, and we had the relationships. But there were some things that just weren't on our side. Timing was not on our side. Had we started this when ChatGPT came out, I can tell you now I would not be a diplomat. I'd be somewhere else with a really massive scale of idea, but we weren't there yet. Me trying to go out and tell people, there's something coming down the line, please take this seriously, let's think about how we can move forward, that's not real, right? People are like, we can always adjust, we're resilient. I'm like, I know, but there's ways to move forward with this. Timing was not on our side in that one. And the hardest part of entrepreneurship that no one has ever told, that no one prepared me for, they make you think it's the little things, right? I shouldn't say little, but they make you think it's the processes. You gotta figure out the legal aspects. You gotta figure out how are you gonna file your taxes? What ways are you gonna put your money in? How are you going to do your inventories, all of these things. The hardest part of entrepreneurship for me, it's your own stuff. It's all of your own worst habits for me came out in entrepreneurship. The constant believing in yourself of this is a good idea, I've got to keep pushing forward, when no one else but you and your co-founder are really believing in this idea. Because when you go to someone and say, my theory of change is that if I want to focus on a family, focus on an individual that's 20 to 35, what I'm going to do is, they all mostly have kids. I'm going to create community programming with artists that we're going to employ to teach them a new hobby. Because I know if you have a new hobby, you are going to be a lifelong learner. Now, if I explain that to someone, they're like, sure, that sounds great. But that doesn't catch on like a wildfire. So it was my own thing of just I've got to just keep at this, as well as, my own time management issues. They just got in my way as an entrepreneur. But failure is a part of the ride, and that experience helps me be a better diplomat, right? Like I know now I'm an entrepreneur within the US government of trying new things, being okay with failure, and thinking about the margins and the people at the margins, even in my work now. It's what inspires me to make sure that once a month, sometimes twice a month, I'm visiting a different part of India to ensure that I understand every single community that I interact with here in this country, because I'm trying to make sure I understand every single person here as a diplomat that I can connect with on US interests. That's just one example of that.
That's an amazing journey. Just to give a twist to the conversation here, and the topic of today is building across communities, and you worked across 10 countries already.
Yeah.
Now, what is that in real life when you say building across communities? For example, in India, when you travel, you don't have to cross the borders. It's itself so, the kind of, the varied cultures and people that you could meet. But now, going across countries and continent, what does that in real life means when you're talking about building communities? And what is the kind of work you've done in those spaces?
In those different spaces, yeah, so a little bit of everything across that, I would say. When I was in Tanzania, I was working for the East African community. We were looking at cases that were wanted by the ICC to see if those could be tried in the East African Court of Justice. I did defense work in Australia, and I also did some work about small businesses entering the pipeline for their mining department, so a little bit there. Of course, the Davos work, we're working on a massive international project, thinking about the future of work. We created a game with a Italian education firm, which was kind of fun, and some travel in there in between. What does that look like on the ground, like in terms of connecting with people?
Yes,
yeah.
And an outcome.
And an outcomes. One thing I always like to push forward to people is that often people feel or see that connecting with people, being outgoing, or what they call charm sometimes, they don't treat it like the skill that it is. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of learning, and a lot to figure out how are you connecting with people, different stakeholders at various levels across different communities. It's reading books. It's not just reading books about it, but it is. There's a part of like reading books. Who are the experts that have done this and where they have failed? I mean, it happens in diplomacy all the time of like missing the mark of that we think we're speaking the same language and we're actually not speaking the same language. But diplomats that have failed in that, or people who you see they're experts and watching them, what do they do at every second? Reading books about how you design rooms and design spaces to ensure that ideas are going to be transferred or that innovation happens. And treating it in the same way that if I'm going to continually learn some new coding, that I continually learn how do I connect with people and how do I build relationships and things like that. What kind of outcomes exactly are you thinking of?
As in when you work across communities, has there been a change or an impact that would have happened in some of those projects? Is there something that...
Let's think of the biggest impacts. This is a great question. Some of them feel like I was a wheel and a cog in some of these. But no, I think the big one of my favorite projects that I worked on, I worked as a global shaper in the World Economic Forum, and we were working on a global project around the future of work. And it was to ensure that young people's ideas about the future of work were being included in the conversation. We started this in 2019, so it was right before the pandemic started, and we presented the results at Davos in 2020. And so the result was we did international surveys. We had people on the ground trying to get the survey out so that people could participate. I think we had over 3,000 participants. We were able to present the results. Everyone was fascinated by the results because they thought it was going to be some fear around technology or around education, when in fact the biggest fear was around the increasing division among classes and socioeconomic levels and what that would look like. And then the next outcome after that was that we did end up developing a program for people to have conversations about the future of work. It was meant to be a conversation you could have with your grandmother, your mom, somebody at work, and then we worked with an Italian education company to make like a game version of it.
Okay.
It did
Great.
not go anywhere. That might be one of my third entrepreneurial failures, I guess.
Right, okay. Getting back to a little bit on the entrepreneurship side and the rest of the diplomatic work you've done, something that we all get to hear from every entrepreneur founder is the aspect of resilience. Right? So in your journey as a diplomat or even in the entrepreneurial or at a personal level, is there some stories of resilience that you had come across where possibly you were, whatever that story, if there is something that you would love to share with us on the resilience front?
Right now, you said resilience, and I'm thinking about the amount of tears I have shed, either in a bedroom or on the floor somewhere of like, I can't believe this failed, but we're just gonna keep pushing. I don't know if I have one specific story about that. The idea is that you just keep moving on. It doesn't ever feel like there's an option to not, right? I guess one thing that I do keep as a mindset is, as long as I take one more step, I didn't give up. Right. And also the realization is, with every single breath, there is a chance for something new to happen or a change to happen, and trying to keep that. So I think those are my big ones. I don't know if I have this one moment. I feel like there's a moment every sentence.
Yeah, I think that's another great way to put it.
My real hope in that is that the Indian market becomes a better place for investment for Indian entrepreneurs, right? While the US market is great for now, it's always a hope, and it's good for the US market as well. But there is also a hope that that environment is built here, so that, and especially when I talk about designing, that you're building solutions for India that don't need to be simply rubber stamped by the US valuation market. But yes, I'm sure we'll pass that along too. I don't know if I have that, except for being authentic to yourself, right? Authentic to yourself and authentic in your relationships. I do definitely live by the Maya Angelou quote of people will often forget what you say. So even if I offered something inspiring, they're gonna forget what I say, but people never forget how you make them feel. You know that from education. It's the hard teacher who may say the right things, but if their message is off, kids don't remember. They remember it when you make them feel good. And that is in every single work that I do of trying to ensure that you make people, you go in with the sense of, how do I want people to feel when I leave this? Do I want them to feel confident in me? Do I need them to feel confident in themselves? Or do I need them just to know I'm in charge here? That's not great, but yeah, be authentic in your relationships. I don't think that's that inspiring, but that's the best way to move forward and to live. As I said, the thing that was hard for me with entrepreneurship is it's yourself, it's your own stuff. The other things you can figure out. The other things that can get boxed up in what you need to learn in entrepreneurship, those are tools that are along the way that people can teach you or you can just pay for, right? There's a lot of things you can just throw money at. You can never throw money at keeping yourself safe, keeping your well-being safe, keeping your guiding star of what guides you in your work to be done.
A question here is, through your work with collaborative labs, institutions, and your role that you play, mostly as a catalyst, because every room is there, out there, and you are moving into those rooms or spaces as a catalyst to play your role there. And how does it actually mean to be a catalyst in such spaces? How in real life, and some instances that you probably would have played that role really well or probably could not, whichever way it has worked.
I've played the role as a catalyst a couple of ways, which is why we even call it Twin County. I love this play of how you're bringing this. You're a very good moderator. You're doing fantastic. In that respect of being a catalyst, when we started Twin Counties, it was because both myself and my co-founder had been in educational and work spaces that we knew that many of our target group had not been in and had not seen. And we were kind of bringing the tinder, essentially for this fire, that of these little bits to then, if someone is just there, we're lighting it up. We're the catalyst for something to change. which often happens in like real, science terms of being catalysts. This example for like an example here of like, what do I offer as a catalyst here? What connections or what thought partnership can I provide as a catalyst? When I operate as a catalyst, it's often just thinking, what am I able to bring that I've seen someplace else or some person that I can bring to another environment or to another person to take their work 10 times further? I don't make empty connections, right? I don't prefer to do that. Nor do I feel the need just to pass on advice or thoughts just because. What is it that I can offer from a different space and take everything out of me from all of my experiences to bring into a different room, to bring into a company, or to bring to an individual that can help this thing move faster or more efficiently? That is usually, so even within the State Department, operating as an entrepreneur, what does it look like to create a new process of something that I learned as an entrepreneur, as a previous business organization, et cetera?
One last question to wind up, before we wind up, is back to the topic that we were talking about, building across communities. And, if at all, if any of us out here there are a lot of people who are inclined in the space of working with communities or various groups that way. What is that one meaningful start that we can do to get into that journey of working with communities? And where could we possibly start with?
The start is just a conversation, not just a conversation. The start is many, many, many conversations of the community that you're working with. The start is valuing the qualitative information that you receive from those communities in the same way you value whatever data that's quantitative that's in front of you. That's the start of working with different communities, is realizing how much exists outside of just the other resources that you can get from different places. That's the start. You're not always going to get trust. You're not always going to be able to go in with trust, and you're not always going to be able to gain it. That's what you're going to work towards. But conversations, respect, checking your ego at the door, and checking your presumptions of what you thought about the community at the door, but holding tight to your values, that's the start. That's it. Because sometimes I've had conversations with bigots, just to be very frank. And I stuck to my values of knowing how I felt about their viewpoints, but what they had to offer in terms of what they were saying was still valuable. It was still a part, because they were still a part of the community. It's frustrating. When I think about you, I know that you're just like, I know I may not want to talk to a parent that has kicked out their kid for various reasons, right? But that's still an important conversation to have. And that's hard. And I know you're holding back when you have that conversation. I've been there. I've had parents that have said, I didn't achieve much and my kid won't achieve much. That hurts when you know that kid in front of you is bright. But that's an important conversation if you're gonna build for the community, you have to know what that barrier is, and you have to know what you're working around. And oftentimes you can still build trust through that.
I think that's I think we'll continue to follow up with you on this now. And thanks for the time, Arlane, that you've taken out from your busy schedules.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And being with us today. I think we are all greatly inspired to have you here today. And thanks for being a great audience on the other side.